Hello, folks. You know how there's like just 30 seconds before you got to do something, like before an appointment or a stream, perhaps, and then you forget like two things, and you're like, oh, can I do without it, or should I use the 30 seconds to go? Anyway, that never happens to me. Welcome to the International Game Developers Association Twin Cities Chapter Game Dev Meeting. Normally, Beth would be hosting the event, but tonight I'm Mark LaCroix. You may have seen me around if you're local to the community. But I promise you, it's just for this month. Beth will be back next month. She's in a place with bad internet, so we have to make sure we actually keep the show running, and so that's why you're stuck with me tonight. Let's see, we got some fun stuff planned for today. Here is our table of contents. We start out with the intro. That's this. I'll be talking for a little bit about this event and our organization, and maybe a couple of things specific to this month, including some community plugs and announcements. If you have something to share and you'd like me to chat about it before we get the presentation started, go ahead and just mention it in Twitch chat, or you can mention the IDGATC board role on Discord, and we'll get pinged. And if we're on the ball, which I can't guarantee, we can mention your thing. Otherwise, send us a message in the meantime, and we can get you hooked up for next month to share your stuff with the community. Once we get through that opening bit, we'll have our main presentations for tonight. We have two of them. First one is from Lynn Richter. It's called Task Failed Successfully, How to Plan for What You Don't Yet Know. Lynn is a community manager working on some pretty cool stuff, but she has a history in a bunch of other things related to gaming, and so I'm really excited to hear her talk about that journey and really how she prepped for it. It's going to be really exciting stuff. Our second presentation is from our own Peter Yang. Peter is a board member for IGGATC, and he's going to be talking about, his topic is called Why the Development Division. He's been talking about board games and video games, and why developers who make both don't always know what the other one is all about. He's got a foot in both worlds, so he's got a unique perspective. I'm really looking forward to that as well. After the presentations, the stream will stop, but we'll be going to hang out in the Minneapolis room and the St. Paul room in the Twin Cities Game Dev Discord. That's our voice chat channels in there. And we tend to hang out for a little while after the show. So please join us there if you want to chat with folks in the community. Just want to start out after the table of contents here just with a big hearty welcome, and to really hammer this point home, IDGATC meetings are open to everyone, and now more than ever. We've been online for over a year now. It still feels like a new thing. I think folks who've watched us kind of transition from in-person events to online know that that's not an easy transition, and we kind of talk about it every month because it still feels temporary. But the truth is, it's now part of what we do around here. So we're going to try to make sure that we find a way to make sure that our online presence, including on the Discord, in Twitch chat, etc., is follows the philosophy we've been trying to have in our in-person events, which is a safe and inclusive community. You can, of course, participate by joining the Discord. We also have a Slack server that's pretty active, and you can check out our website for all the details on that, including our safe event policy. We are looking to go back to in-person events at some point, and I think we do mention this every month past few. But I do want to say the events of the last couple of weeks with the Delta variant and all the sort of the ups and downs of this pandemic, I think it's probably going to be a little longer than we had hoped, say a month or two ago. But we're reaching out, we're making calls, we're trying to get our act together. So when it is time to come together again here in the Twin Cities, we will be able to do that and provide a space for people to get together. In the meantime, of course, that's what online is for, and I think we're doing pretty good. I think people have been rolling with that transition all right. So we're going to make sure that we keep that space nice and well, and keep it going even when we are able to get back in person. A little bit about IGGATC. You hear us talk about this every month again, but this is an all-volunteer organization. It's community run, and it's run by the volunteer board. You can see the lovely folks here. Half of us really like getting our picture taken, and the other half of us put up with getting our picture taken. It's a little bit of a game to see who's who in this lineup here. The key thing about IGGATC is that we can't do this alone. So, we have the board. The board helps make sure that the meetings happen, and helps make sure that the presence in the community, we have that sort of place to go and be together. But we really want to up the participation of volunteers in the organization. And so what that means is, if you want to have an IDGA TC event that you run, you don't have to be part of the board. You can volunteer to say, hey, I have an idea for a thing, but I don't know if I have all the tools I need to do it, but I have the energy to make it happen. So come to us and we can make it happen. So if that's you, if that's someone, if you want to help out with our events or create new ones, if you want to help IDGATC grow or improve, you got an idea for how to run things, ideas for programs, even one-off kind of events or anything basically. Blue sky. If you got a concept, if you want to help, we would love to have you. So contact us. Our contact at the bottom of the slide here, and the email igda twincities@gmail.com. If you're interested in serving on the board, that's something that we have been trying to make sure we have a continuity. So board membership will change over the years, and we want to develop an elections process for that. That's been a project we started before the pandemic. The pandemic kind of sidelined that. We've talked a little bit about that in some meetings. But if you're interested in serving on the board, get in touch with us so we kind of can gauge interest. So once we have that process in place, we can make sure that the people who are interested in that, kind of know what's going on. So let us know. This is our regular event schedule. We've standardized our meeting starts. It used to be pretty standard, but now we've pretty much locked it down. Wednesdays at 6:30 is when we have our meetings. Second Wednesday of the month, that's this meeting, the Gamedev meeting, normally hosted by Beth. We have, of course, our industry and community presentations. That's the longest running main activity of IDGATC, and that's going to keep on keeping on. Third Wednesday of the month, that's a week from today, Twin Cities Playtest. That is the event that I do host normally. Although it's run by myself, my wife Dale, and Lane Davis, who is a volunteer in the community and is kind of doing most of the work, making sure that we get great in-development games showcased at Twin Cities Playtest, which is a time for us to playtest online. So if you want to play some of these games, you can use a service called Parsec, and you can play live on stream with us. So that's been a real fun event, and that we started just as the pandemic got going to sort of make up for the lack of in-person events. But it's developed a bit of a life of its own, and especially thanks to Lane for helping keep that alive. So tune in next week for that. Week after that, fourth Wednesday, Minnesota VR and HCI. You can attend those on Twitch like these meetings, but also in Altspace VR. So you can put on a headset and join on. That's hosted by Zach. Martin helps out on that one as well. And you can check that out every fourth Wednesday. I believe last month there was a scheduling mishap, and so that got pushed to this month. But details on all of our events are in the Discord and in the events info channel. And so you can check that out to find all those more specific details. And if you have a question about those, the folks listed on the slide there are the people to talk to about those meetings. And again, if you want to run, we got one Wednesday left, guys. We can add a fourth meeting. But, we need one of you to propose and do it. So get in contact if that is you. All right. IDGA is our parent organization. We want to talk a little bit more about that in this sort of next era of our chapter, is to be a little bit more involved with the parent organization. That sort of provides an infrastructure for these chapter communities. The International Game Developer Association, I'm just reading off the slide now, is the world's largest nonprofit organization serving all individuals who create games. They're an advocacy group. And one of the things you can do is, if you're a member of IDGA, is you can get, enjoy some unique resources, networking, and some exclusive discounts. You get discounts on GDC tickets, Unity Pro subscriptions, stuff like that. But more importantly, your membership dues will support the local chapter. So for a long time, we've been operating pretty lean, and I think that's worked pretty well for us. And I don't think there's any a chance of us going away under those conditions, but we would like to do more as a chapter. And in order for that to happen, we need a budget. In order for that to happen, we need folks in the community more than have up to now become IDGA members and claim us as your home chapter. If you're in Minnesota, even western Wisconsin, Iowa, maybe a bit of the Dakotas, this Twin Cities area, we're your chapter. And so if you feel that this community has given anything to you, that's one of the ways to show your support, is to become a member of the parent organization and claim us as your chapter. One of the things we'd love to do, we'd love to provide scholarships. We'd like to put on workshops, do diversity outreach and other programs, and those things do cost money. And I think we can still be pretty lean, but we'd like a little bit of money. So anyway, that's the pitch. Thank you for hearing it. You can read more about the benefits of membership, igda.org. All right, here's the part we talk a little bit about what's going on this month. And first thing is, you got me as a host, so I'm going to have to talk about Nice Games Club. Nice Games Club is the podcast that I co-host with my pals Ellen and Steven, plus some, we'll have some friends and industry guests. We do roundtables, we do interviews, we do game jams, we do a bunch more. And we'll talk a little bit about what we'll be doing on the show this month. And I think I'm going to try to make this a regular slide, if I can get the rest of the board to agree with me. Talk a little bit about what we were doing on the show. We did a game jam this month. We also talked about gamepads and nature. It was a really good roundtable we did. We did a special on GDC, which happened last month. It was really interesting because it's the second year that that GDC was online only, and so we talked about not just the sessions that we attended virtually, but also we talked about the show itself and how it had changed and what it means to developers, and it's pretty, really interesting. I really liked that episode, so please give that one a listen. And last week we did a really fun thing. We started a new type of episode where we talked about sort of workshopping ideas. So we do game jams on the show where we're given a prompt, but what we thought we'd do a new format where somebody brings an idea they've already got and we kick it around for a little while. So Ellen had this cool idea, and the three of us sort of chatted about it for a while. It's really, really neat. You should check that out. Nicegames.club is where you can find information about that. If you've got something that you're doing in the community that you'd like to have a regular presence here on the Game Dev meeting, please let us know. We want to make sure that you don't have to beg every month. We'd love to have people's regular activities and events be part of the sort of news section here on the show. Other news this month, 2DCon is happening at the end of the month. 2DCon is, I'll read from the slide again, an all-inclusive, family-friendly, charitable gaming event. There's going to be tournaments, live music. There's going to be panels. There's going to be some live podcasts, including one you may have heard of. Going to be, just a bunch of gaming stuff. It's an event that's been around for a long, long time, and it's the first, I believe, and I might be wrong about this. It's the first in-person convention of this type that's being held since the pandemic began. And so what that means is policies. So that means policies about vaccination, about negative COVID testing, mask wearing, stuff like that I think I really want people to take seriously, and 2DCon is taking very seriously. So if you're curious about that, like why are they holding an event now? Is it safe? Do I feel comfortable? 2dcon.net has a lot of that information. And I encourage you to check that out. And if you do attend, to take that stuff seriously. Because, the only way we'll be able to get together to do anything is if we, take this seriously. And I think now we're in that transition period. So what we all agree on, what the rules are, is something that I think it has to be an open discussion. So be part of that. Check out the site if you're interested in attending. It's such a great event every year. IDGATC will be there. We'll have a booth there that our pal Peter, that you'll be hearing from later, is going to be running. And you can talk to him at the show if you're interested in volunteering for IDGA. If you have any concept or feedback, of course. Talk to Beth before the show if you want further details on what we're doing as sponsoring the event. We're going to be doing Indie Island. So Beth, as she's done in years past, is going to be organizing the Indie Island, which is a bunch of local in-development games and release titles as part of a showcase on the show floor. You can play games. You can vote on your favorites. You'll even be able to buy, some codes for released games. Wink, wink. That's a thing I'm going to be doing there at the show. And playtest, of course, games that are not quite there yet. Provide your feedback to developers, which has always been a fun event for that purpose. So talk to Beth about details for that if you're interested. All right, I believe that is all I have on 2DCon. My mouth's getting a little bit dry, so I'm just going to get through this last slide here, which is anything else. So this is the time for you, if you're in the community, to sort of talk about your thing. Normally, we like to get you to let us know in advance so we can make a slide for you. But if anybody has something, I'm going to give you like 15 seconds to get my attention for me to share a link or anything you're working on. So I'm going to do that starting now. Like I froze and then chat froze. It was pretty fun. All right. Well, as it happens, I think we're pretty good. If you want to get something in the news and plugs, please get in touch and we'll make sure we carve out a little bit of time for you next month. All right. Now it is time for our presentations. We're going to be hearing first from Lynn, which I believe has just joined us in the chat here. So I'm going to head over to there and introduce her. Hello, Lynn. I can, and everyone else can too. I hope. Sure. Can you hear me? Oh, brilliant. Uh huh. I know everything feels like every little mistake and flub we have with all this new stuff. It's like, oh well, who can be bothered? But it's just a temporary thing, and it's been going on for so long now that we don't have any excuses left. We're all just bad at this. Is what it is. Yeah. All right. Well, if you want to share your slides into the Discord chat, I'll have you throw up in here, and then I'll get out of your way, and then you can get started. Oh, that is totally okay. I love it. All right. Then I'm still going to get out of your way. Is that all right? I'll consider it, and listeners can wait with bated breath to see if I pop in at any point. All right, take it away. Oh no. Okay. Lynn, looks like folks can't hear you, so I'm gonna take a moment. It must have been, which would be so sad because must have just sounded like a fool. Um, uh, yeah, yeah. Folks watching, I can hear Lynn, so basically the problem is just definitely on my end. So just sit tight, and we'll get that going. I'll throw up the intermission slides. So just a moment. All right, Lynn, give that a go. See if folks can hear you.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3.
I think it should be working. Folks can report whether it's
Yeah.
good,
Yay!
good.
I see some yeses in the chat, so
Oh,
that is a good
apologies,
sign.
folks. That was me literally just checking the wrong box, but it's fixed now. Um, all right,
You
Lynn.
all missed the part where I asked Mark to do an interpretive dance to my thing because I'm not actually presenting slides. So I'm just here to talk with all of you lovely people. And I do want to start off by thanking both Mark and Beth for having me. It is really an honor to be here. I never really thought that I'd be asked to speak at an IGDA event, and that's really quite touching. So thank you for having me. So today I'm going to walk you through a little bit about. Originally, I called it "Task Failed Successfully" was the name of my talk, and it's just my story about how I have made my way through life, always kind of what I would call video game adjacent, and now working as a community manager for Knockout City with Velan Studios, which I still wake up every day and go, oh my god, I get paid to talk to people on the internet about a video game, which is basically always been my dream job, and it's really great to be here. So I know there are a lot of similar people, or people who are in similar situations where, finding a job in the games industry is very hard, and there's a lot of self-doubt and motivation that goes along with it. You have to be your own motivator throughout this process. So a little bit about like how I did it. So I'll start off with a little bit of background about me. I'm a 4-time entrepreneur and business owner. So I didn't start as working in the video game industry. In fact, I ran video game cocktail bars. I opened the Midwest's first video game cocktail bar in 2013. It was called 42 Lounge. My favorite memory of that I would tell everyone once we were successful enough for me to tell the story at least was when I was painting at night after my day job and I could hear people walking by the window. I could hear people talking about, like, they're going to put a video game bar in there and it'll fail in 6 months, and I was just sitting there going, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to keep painting away here. It was inspired by my love for games, also by going to video game conventions and really wanting to bottle up that feeling of being at a convention, and take that home in a way that was something that I could do, or from my friends could do, or people could do on a day-to-day basis. So we started with a small space, which we outgrew extremely quickly. So fueled by that, that success, that first taste of success, we opened a second location in 2015. It was called 42 Ale House. So now I have 42 Lounge from 42 Ale House. And less than 2 years of experience, because the amount of time that we'd actually been open before we opened the second location, we opened on our 2-year anniversary, which was very foolish, not a good idea at all. And so we ended up doing the best. Running one business was hard. Running 2 businesses was extremely hard. And if you think the bar and restaurant business is hard, if any of you have ever spent any time in it, and if so, you have my eternal thanks, because it's a hard industry to be in. Try adding video games to that. Try adding people who are very passionate about their experiences and the games that they play, and the experience of having that in a public space where there's alcohol, which isn't always the best combination. So yeah, that didn't go so great, and I also didn't really have the best relationship with my then husband. So long story short, we went through a divorce, and I lost the second location. So I went back and I doubled down on the first one, which was kind of really not doing so great because we had put all of our attention in the second one. And so I took that one from almost failing and I doubled down on it, and I really reinvigorated my love for it and turned it into a successful business in under a year. So then foolishly, I decided to open up a bar and restaurant space again, because success, failure, let's just do it again. It was in partnership with a local board game store. So this was somebody who had a lot more experience than I had at running a business. 20 years of running a business from the ground up. So I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be much better. And the pandemic happened, a whole bunch of other stuff. We closed a few months later. In the meantime, I had opened my fourth and final business, which was an event planning business with my partner, Lisa. We ran Awkward Nerd events, and we hosted big, fabulous, nerdy events where people would dress up, do cosplay, all sorts of things like that. So the reason I'm spending so much time telling you this is because by the time that I had realized that I wanted to pursue a job in the video game industry, I had all of this experience and I had all of this behind me, and I thought, oh my God, everybody's gonna want to hire me. I mean, like, look at me, I'm so fabulous. Like, I'm gonna have these jobs, like, just knocking at my door. People are gonna want to hire me. That is not what happened. TLDR, spoiler alert, all of that. So that brings me to my first part of this. How do you deal with job application rejection emails? Because they're hard and they're soul crushing, and you think that you have all of the experience to do this job. Why wouldn't someone want to hire you? You would be the best. Look at you compared to all of these other people, and believe me, yes, you should feel that way about yourself. But I guess when I look back on it, I think now with the hindsight is always 2020. Those jobs should have turned me down. I was was applying to the wrong places. I was applying to be anything from, like a social media manager, community manager. If somebody had offered me like a VFX job or something like that, or a biz dev job, I would have been like, yeah, sure, I can do that. I'm sure I can figure it out. Like, look, I've done all this other stuff, right? And I would have been the worst person for all of those positions. So when they started coming in, that really knocked me down a peg, and then a couple more, and yeah, I didn't hear a lot back from them. So I took a step back, and I actually ate some humble pie and took a side job, which this was during the pandemic, and I started working for working as a social media manager for a hair salon in a school. And that was not at all what I wanted to do. That is the farthest thing from the video games industry that I wanted to do. But I learned so much in that position. And it was kind of like this moment of like when Stella got her groove back of like, all right, I think I have some ideas here. I think I can put together a marketing strategy for your business. And I think that I can position you in a way that, makes sense for you. And yeah, you know what? Actually, I do have these skills, but I don't have is the experience of doing this professionally for someone else. So I had to do it for a while. And in the meantime, I took all of those job rejection emails, and I got a whiteboard and I put it in my office opposite my computer. And every time I applied for a job, I wrote down which job I applied for. And then I would update it with, did they give me an interview? Have they sent me a rejection letter? I would cross it out, big, bold, cross out. But I would leave it there. Because when you're going through this process and you're applying for jobs, especially in this industry, you think, oh my God, I've gotten hundreds of job rejection emails. And looking at that every day allowed me to actually keep track of how many there actually were and what I was at in the process. A lot of people do this with an Excel sheet. I find that like if I do it with an Excel sheet, I can close that document. I don't have to look at it anymore. But having that whiteboard in my office was something that I had to look at every single day. And when I saw the progression along, it gave me more confidence. Like, look at these companies that I'm applying to, and I heard back from that one, and this one gave me a second interview, and that made me feel good. Then I would get another interview, so on and so forth. Another thing that changed in my experience that led to this opening up and also I just want to pause for a second because I realized I'm looking at a document right now. I can't see chat. So if you've been asking questions, I'm so sorry. I cannot manage reading questions and responding to them. So if you are asking them, please, I'll stick around at the end. But so another thing that changed in this process for me that opened up a lot of doors and made this whole thing start feeling more manageable to me is that I started attending networking events. And I really want to like pause here and say like when people tell you to attend networking events, they make it sound so simple like, oh, just go to a networking event. Just that's how you're supposed to get a job. Like so it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that's true, but no one ever actually fills in the gap of like, where are these networking events and who do you talk to? And when you get there, what do you say? And like, how awkward is it to show up to a networking event and be like, basically like virtual briefcase in hand, like, hello, can you have a job, please? Like, no one wants to do that. It's hard as heck to do. So here's how I kind of face it, and we're still in this pandemic, and actually I found it to be kind of a blessing. I started reaching out virtually instead of having to show up at an event at a conference or something like that. Being in a virtual position, even though I'm an extrovert, like this gave me this there's space between you and me, and if I want to leave, I can just close my computer and I can go home, like which is right over here. So I started reaching out to some organizations. I joined Women in Games International. I like video games. I'm a woman. I'm passionate about both. The two things went together, and so I joined them. Obviously, you're all here because you care about the IGDA, which is a fantastic organization with branches all over where you can network with those people. I joined the Games Industry Gathering, which is a group of vetted industry professionals that all get together on Friday and don't always talk about industry stuff, which was really relaxing and actually a great way for me to get introduced to a bunch of people without feeling that pressure. I joined the Key Creators, which is very similar to the Games Industry Gathering. And then I went out and I found every freaking community manager group I could find, because as I started seeing how I was progressing with these job interviews and these, I was hearing back, the more I got into it, the more I was like, yeah, I was right. Community management, that's where I really actually want to be. So I started narrowing it down. I started reaching out to people who had given talks recently and saying like, "Hey, I saw your talk. I watched you on Twitch, or I'd seen you give this presentation. I really enjoyed it. Do you have any insight on this thing?" And like one of them, Christina Amaya, had actually added me to the Discord community group for community managers. So I met all of those people. And so these little things, they feel so insignificant one at a time, but all together created this network of people that I was able to actually source to, which brings me to my next point, which is how do you find a mentor? And Mark, if I'm at time, please just interrupt me. I can totally wrap this up at any time that you need me to. So,
You're free to go on as long as you like.
right. So same thing, or I shouldn't say same thing, but similar thing with go find a networking group. Same thing you hear with find a mentor, find somebody who can coach you. Who are these magical people and where do they live? Like seriously, there's no one good answer for this. And I know even with my experience with Women in Games International, like we wanted to do a lot of mentorship opportunities, but even so, like it's very hard to just pair one person with another person and be like, you're gonna be the mentor and you're gonna be the mentee. It doesn't quite work that way. So what I recommend is find some people that you trust. Don't look at it as like, oh, I need this person to like be my life coach and give me all this advice. But like maybe pick like two or three people, the same couple of people that you keep running into, and just run some things by them. Be like, hey, like I was applying for this job and I didn't get it. And I think I may have done this. Do you think you have any insight on this? Did you have a similar experience with this? Approach it from a humble perspective of these people have probably gone through it, especially if they're in a similar position to what you want to be in. And I found out a lot. Like I reached out to one community manager, and I had this conversation with him, and I was like, like I don't have community management experience. Do you think that's what's holding me back? And he's like, probably not. And like after that conversation, I was able to say to look at what he had said in the guidance that he had given me and go, no, that part was actually all in my head. It wasn't the fact that I didn't have the experience. It was that my perception of not having that experience was holding me back. It was keeping me from applying to jobs. It was keeping me from being successful in my interviews. And it was keeping me from explaining my story of who I was. The the interview that I finally had for the job that I have now, I remember distinctly when one of the owners had asked me, "Well, so you've managed all these communities in person, but how do you think you could possibly manage an online community of literally millions of players?" And without even thinking, I said, "You know, I've managed communities in person, and that's a heck of a lot harder to do when you have a 350-pound drunk dude who's angry about the game and the burger he just ordered, and he's this far from your face. I'd rather have the ability to block and mute him online." And they went, "Oh, okay, yeah." Like, and I just saw how that experience had, instead of hiding it and covering it up and being almost ashamed of my background and where I'd come from, had given me the ability, and this I was prepared for this very moment my entire life, that it was just one of those moments. And then I would say, going back to the mentor thing, make consistent efforts to follow up with these people. And this is so hard, and I fail at it all the time. Hence the original name of my talk, Task Failed Successfully. If you can, if you see that it's their birthday, if you see that, they did a cool thing, they gave a talk, or they had a small win at work that they posted about. All of us have this, oh my God, I'm not good enough mentality somewhere in the back of our heads. Reach out to them, congratulate them, say hi, just, how's your dog doing? Something like that. Letting them know that you are a part of their life, that you're keeping tabs on them, not like in a mean way, obviously, like in a positive way, that you care about their progression through life means so much to people. Which actually, as I was writing this, I was like making a mental list of like, oh, I need to follow up with these people. So I'm not an expert at it by any means, but it definitely is a thing that I recommend doing if you can. So lastly, how do you get rid of this imposter syndrome thing again that we all keep coming back to, that holds us back from being successful? I don't have a clear answer to that. I'm not going to pretend like I do, because I suffer from it every day. I go into work and I go, oh, God, how can I do this? How can I possibly be good at this? And what I've found is that it goes back to what I said earlier about like being humble, being aware of yourself. Don't look at other people as comparisons. I know that's so easy for you to say, but look at them as inspiration, because they're probably experiencing similar things as well. Every time I look at some of my icons in this industry, I'm inspired by what they're doing, and I want to find ways to do that myself. Be curious. Don't be defensive about, if somebody comes to you and you don't have the answer of something, ask them what they would do in this situation, especially if they have previous experience. Like my coworker, who I work very closely with, had jobs in the past as a community manager. So I love being able to go to him and being like, hey, so if you had this situation, how would you handle it? Because I'm thinking doing this. Would you take the same approach? And kind of hearing that back and forth. And we don't always agree, but it's good to have that other side of it. Didn't really write an ending to this. That's pretty much where my document ends. So I guess I'll hand it back over to you, Mark. I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope that you've enjoyed. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions because I had a few as you were talking. First, thank you so much for joining us. I do just want to say I love that the way you outlined your experience and how that really informs the way you address solve problems in your current work, and how that I think that people are very quick, especially if you do come from one field and you move to another. It's really hard to feels like you're starting over, but you've got all that life behind you to take with you, and I think you really like demonstrated how direct that can be, even when it doesn't feel like things have anything to do with each other or have a tenuous relationship. So I think that's a great example for people to follow.
Thank you.
But I do have two questions. One is how do you create a kind of tone within an online community, and how does this community is a little silly, or like this community, obviously you want to keep out, you want to moderate, but there's a certain kind of like flavor you want to have when you're working as a community manager, right? And how does doing that differ from doing something similar in a real world space where you have kind of like, this is the type of place that you want customers to feel a certain way? Do you find a lot of connections there? Is there some things you thought would be the same but different? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So the first part of it, how do you set that tone? I think you try and be mindful of in every conversation that you have with other people. So for my game, Knockout City, there's this DJ in the game that has this resounding voice that, I mean, you hear him as an introduction, and you can hear it. You start like thinking in that tone, and so I started actually using that as my guide throughout the conversations that I would have with people online in the brand voice. And then that did start carrying over into even the conversations that I was having in Discord, which are far more casual and far more relaxed. And I think that was kind of the basis for, all right, I know that this game is competitive, but I also know that it's a game about dodgeball and it's about throwing balls at each other's faces and knocking them off the map. And I mean, what could be more exciting and fun than that? So have fun with it. Decide early on and like maybe write down a few key words or phrases that you're like, okay, I want to be spunky, but a little bit like maybe you have a game that's a little bit crass, but you want to be just borderline this, and you want to sprinkle in this, and then keep coming back to that, and ask yourself when you're approaching, a situation, does it fit these guidelines that I set for myself? Um, and as far as like how does that compare to the in-person conversations? I think being in person was a lot harder. And when you find community members that are not embracing the kind of community you want, it's a lot harder in person to like call them out, so to speak, and be like, hey, that's not appropriate, or that's not okay here, or you know what, like let's not talk about that right now. um if you have a Discord, for instance, you can have a private conversation with those people. If you have an in-person community, it really sets you up to be like, all right, I have to have some very difficult conversations. So I guess that's what kind of gave me that ability to be like, all right, I've had to do this in person. I've had to tell a grown man that he needed to go home and shower because he smelled too bad to be in my business. Like those kinds of things are like, okay, I can handle this. And then at the same time, on the other hand, so you've got the very negative situations, and on a very positive end, reinforce the behavior that you want to see. When somebody's like, I got inspired by one of the people in my Discord who made some really bad puns one day, and I was like, you know what? It's Bad Dad Joke Friday. You kicked it off. Like, all right, let's do bad dad jokes. And people are coming up with dodgeball related dad jokes and things like that. Like, encourage the behavior that you want to see. Like, take it to the next level. Push that line a little bit. Encourage them to be creative.
That's great. We got a question from chat here. If could you give some examples of great ways in which new members of a community have approached meeting people, adding value, making connections, especially if they had little to contribute from a skill or experience perspective?
Oh, let's see. Um, yeah, I mean, if I'm thinking about in person, whenever, and actually it's really the same thing, in person or online, one of the best things to do if you don't have that much experience is to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation and be like, hey, let's learn about this together. Do you want to, like, for instance, I one of my bars was a little bit more board game heavy. Do you want to unbox this board game with me and figure it out together? And I'll run the board game night and I'll bring everyone together. But I don't know anything about this game, so we're going to learn it together. And it's putting yourself in those situations. So like in an online situation, we had a lot of people in the beginning who were like, I'm really bad at the game. Can we all like can we have a night to just play? And those things take, when you got a bunch of sweaty people out there who are very competitive about this game, it can be hard to put yourself out there. But yeah, I think be vulnerable, be willing to be like, hey, is there anybody else who's experiencing this with me? Can you find other people who are looking for similar experiences to what you're looking for? Yeah, so I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's interesting because it requires some daring on the part, like you said, being vulnerable, and people need to feel that they're able to. So that makes it a big part of your job, is making sure that it, not so much like coaching someone like, here's what you do, here's step 1 or 2, but making sure that when they show up in the door, they know that it's a place they can be vulnerable, or sort of follow those instructions, because they know that they won't be knocked down for that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, no one's saying that that's easy,
Mm-hmm.
but you're gonna make some friends out of a situation like that, and that's gonna be heckin' rewarding.
That's fantastic. I have one final question, which is really just about that journey. So if you're struggling to find something new, find the place where you can, kind of get into the industry you want to get or do, like, how do you know you found what you're looking for, and it's not just another step to the final stage? Do you know what I mean? Like when do you stop getting a little restless? When do you kind of settle in? When you know that, okay, this is it. This is what I was, even if you didn't know that's what it was when you got it.
Um, you know, I don't know that I have a clear answer to your question because I'm one of those people that I I consistently look for the next thing. I'm never like I don't want to say that I'm never truly happy because I love my job. I really do. I absolutely love waking up every day and doing it, even through the frustrating points. There's always something good to look forward to in what I do. Um, but I think right now, for me personally, I'm challenged, and that's really great when you can have something that every single day I learn something new. Every single day I look into something new, or I find, a new way of doing something or a more efficient way of doing it. And I'm getting better at my job right now. So when do you know that that's it? No, I think it's more of a question of like, when do you know that you need to be challenged again? Like, when do you know that like you're ready for that next step? So I would flip it on its head because I don't want to be comfortable. I don't want to be like there forever. I want, and I don't mean like valid. I just mean like I always want to be challenged. I always want to be going for that next thing.
Dang, that's a brilliant answer. I really loved that. That was fantastic.
Thank you. Actually, I just want to throw it back at you because you're a well, obviously you do podcasting, things like that, but you are a great conversationalist
Oh,
and the perfect person to host this. Good job, Mark.
oh, thank you so much. Well, it's smiles all around at the end of this one. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lynn, for
Yay.
joining us. Thanks for the folks tuning in so far. And Lynn, I hope you stick around as an audience member for our next presentation, which is from Peter Yang. Peter, do you want to join the event stage? He will once this Twitch lag catches up. There he goes.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Peter.
There we go. We're all caught up. How's
Yeah.
everyone doing tonight?
Everyone in Twitch chat has to reply. How are you doing tonight before we can continue? Right?
Oh my. There's a hefty 23 people in there right now.
Mhm.
Okay. Let me see if I can set this up.
You gonna share
my
your slides?
screen.
Hmm.
Yep. Share my
Sorry to
screen.
make you follow Lynn. That was not nice of me.
Oh, that was a fantastic presentation, and I really enjoyed the part about being having honesty and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
That was a very good point.
All right. Well, without further ado, I'll let you get started.
Oh.
Ping me if you need me.
I will. It's presentation mode. Presentation mode? Where's my button? Button. Present. There we go. Fabulous. Doing real good. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm also trying to manage seeing the chat as I'm looking at this. But welcome, folks. Welcome to my talk. My name is Peter Yang, and today's presentation is going to be about why the development division, what board game developers and video game developers should really know about one another. So to jump right into things, if you've been to my other presentation here at IGDA, you will know that I enjoy really doing pop quizzes for people. And my first pop quiz is, of course, dental related. So I'll run through these because I won't be reading chat the entire time. But here's just some food for thought for the dental world. Is it better to brush your teeth in the morning or before bed at night? And I'm just going to give it like a quick few seconds here because it's actually sometimes surprising for people to hear that it is always better to brush your teeth at night. Well, you should always do it both in the morning and at night. But if you only did it once per day, you should really be doing it at night because, of course, what you're doing is that you're removing all the bacteria you built up during the entire day and just spitting them out so they don't go to bed with you at night. The next question is, what is the most common preventable dental emergency? And I'm pretty sure everyone can think about that. It's a toothache, right? But a toothache the toothache will often lead to a tooth extraction, and that is often due to dental decay. And of course, a cavity is just the basics of having acid that breaks down for the bacteria in your mouth that react with sugars. And when a bacteria reacts with sugar, the byproduct is acid, and the acid causes a cavity. And if you don't treat that cavity, that tooth is going to cause pain. It's going to get into the roots, it's going to cause infection, and then you're gonna have to extract the tooth, and that is one of the most common preventable dental emergencies out there. The next question is, do you really need to take out your wisdom tooth? It's one of my favorite questions. Because a lot of people actually don't. I don't know. A lot of people are like, do we always have to take these out? Most of the times people do it because of pain. So the answer is really yes. But actually, no. One of the most common reasons people take out wisdom teeth is, of course, pain. But one of the other reasons we also like to take them out is because your mouth just doesn't always have the room for all 4 wisdom teeth. And since because a lot of people are not always brushing, not always flossing, it's hard for people to get back there. So if you just pull out those teeth, that's 4 less surfaces per tooth. So that's 16 less surfaces you have to brush or clean every day. And so it's just much easier to generally keep your mouth clean if you just remove those. So yeah, that's another reason why we pull this out. And why do I always start my presentations with dental facts? It's because even as a professional that knows that I should be brushing twice a day and I should be flossing every day, I often don't do / choose not to do them. And that's going to be how our presentation starts. So as a professional who's been doing lots of presentations and done a lot of speeches, I would like to get weird. So who am I? So the reason I loved wanting to do this presentation about board game and video game development is because I have a really fun position that I actually do a little bit of both. On the left side of the slide here, you can see that I've actually been recently doing QA at Activision. I've been doing a little bit of design consulting for a couple other video game developers here in Minnesota, including Everhood by Foreign Gnomes. I'm super excited to be working with them. I got a little chance to do a little bit of story development with them on Everhood, but they reached out for me for their next thing, so I'm excited for that. I've been doing 4 years of game jams, and I can't program, which is why I actually do a lot of project management and kind of a lot of the behind the scenes kind of things like design documentation, etc. And of course, I love attending playtesting events, so I have a really big passion for just seeing how a project grows from prototype all the way up to final product. And then the other half of my story is that I'm a board game developer. I've played 3 games over my 3 years since I've begun this journey as a game designer, with the most recent being Master Cat Juice Cucumber from Fight in a Box, which is, get this, a $13 hidden roll maze builder. Which, if that is such an interesting byline, go check it out. You can give it a Google. But it is such a heavy thinky game when you only realistically have about 5 actions per game, and the game is generally done before then. But it's fantastic. I'm really proud of it. Would I go back and redesign it? Most likely, absolutely. And I'm also, the last bit here is I'm kind of a local Minnesota agent pitch coach. I really like helping first-time developers get their games from prototype, from concepted idea to a finished product that can maybe get pitched to a publisher, which includes things like getting a sales sheet, getting a script, playtesting feedback, all those good things. And that's going to be another half that I do a lot. And I actually am working with a couple other local Minnesota developers, including Nice Games Club, with the game that they've been working on. And if you want more information on that, I think you want to go check out episode 210 of their podcast. I think it's 210, but in any case, I'm working with them on a game, including Maxwell, who's also another Minnesota local developer too. But yeah, that's a basic, quick background on who I am, what I'm doing these days. So let's give a quick overview over my presentation. So as you can see here, I'm going to be kind of covering some common ground, some stuff that a lot of people will recognize between what board games and video games do. There's going to be some rare elements, some food for thought, which I really think that should be further explored. Some mythical differences, which is some weird things that I've learned just by being in the space of both a board game and video game developer. It's just some weird stuff. And then, of course, we'll have Q&A at the end. So, yeah, let's just jump right in. Common ground. So, one of the biggest things I've seen for common ground for both developing both board games and video games is that there is so much work that goes into a minimum viable product. Like, geez, not even including the planning stages. I've seen a lot of game jams where you only really have the first 4 to 8 hours before you actually have to start working through development, so you can have a product by the end of a 48-hour game jam. Like, you only have that initial planning phase, but seeing a game go from full prototype all the way to this finished product and in a board game setting, it is just so much planning. And I can't even and having done a little bit of QA with Activision, and seeing, I kind of joined in during the middle of Cold War. Oh my god, that game has a lot of planning that even goes on to beyond its first launch date, which was again back in last year when I first started. And it's just phenomenal how much thought goes into making a game even before you start typing the first line of code. And that's something that is it's not exclusive. I'm pretty sure, like, looking at Lynn and their planning on how they started their multiple businesses, there was probably so much planning that even went into before they made that first phone call. And I was just like, oh, I appreciate so much of the whole planning stage that goes into a mobile product. I think the next biggest thing that I was most happy to see is that it's okay to have bad developer art, bad prototype pieces in a prototype. It is completely okay for people to just bring up, oh gosh, what is it? Like pen and paper scratch prototypes to a big game that is like a heavy war game, and it requires like 3 hours of play. And it has all these little bits and pieces, which are like, these are tanks, these are foot soldiers, this is a ranger. And to see this all splayed out on like a hand-drawn paper board is phenomenal. And that is something that is perfectly acceptable, even in the prototype stage. So I want to tell everyone here, if you have a game or you have an idea, don't be afraid to prototype it with bad art, or with your hand-drawn art, or with developer placeholder art. Because even if you are still using these placeholder things, taking the time to put the work in and put them all together so that see if it functions, see if it plays, that is going to be incredibly helpful, and that is going to be how you get your first prototypes off the ground. It's just do it. Oh no, go back. The fun way to play the game should be the right way to play. This is another really good point, just in the video game world, that actually is very true in the board game world too. And I think as a development cycle, you often pick up very quickly what is not fun about a board game. But it's a little bit harder to figure that out when you're playing a video game, I would say. But I like picking on roguelikes. I think one of my favorite ones a few years ago was Dead Cells, which is still kicking around today. Dead Cells is incredibly hard, but it is such a game that when you die, you are just able to jump back in right away. That death cycle and that punishment is very minimalistic. Which is again very not similar to how Mario is. Mario, when you die, you have a cute little cutscene. You get the jingle. Mario goes wah 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 wah, and you are a little bit rewarded when you die in Mario, which is kind of the fun part about the game. In a board game, you don't really have the same kind of things. Like if you're playing Sagrada and you have if you haven't played Sagrada before, it's a board game where you're drafting dice, putting it into a board, but you cannot have any two colors or you cannot have any two numbers touching each other on anywhere on the entire board. And so that game has punishment from where when you put a dice into your board, it's permanently locked in, and you cannot place another dice next to it in the adjacent orthogonally with the same color or number. And you get this moment down the road where you're just having less and less spaces to fill, and you're just gonna be like, "Oh, I boxed myself in." That game has exemplified that the right way to play is to also have fun and making sure you're planning ahead. But failing that, you have that moment of like, "Oh my gosh, I made a huge mistake," and you punish yourself a little bit, but it's a fun kind of punishment. So that's why a board game can also still have those mechanics and still exemplify a lot of those same rules about making sure that the fun way to play is the right way to play. I think playtesting with the public and playtesting with friends, it is incredibly good. It's two different worlds of feedback. Granted, you do want to play with your friends because they will, get you positive notes saying that they like it, and that's always really good for motivation. That's like good psychological energy. But you do need to playtest with the public because they're going to give you the honest truth. And I think one of the biggest tricks, things that I would say for anyone who is playtesting their own thing out in the public, is to say that you're playtesting this for a friend And that is going to be how, even though you're the maker, just say that. That's going to be how they're going to give you some real honest thoughts on how you can improve the game. And it's a small trick, but I guarantee you, if you try it just once, you will know, you will see that you'll get not necessarily harsh honesty, but you'll get way more honest feedback. And then last bit of common ground I have here is just to fail faster. The fastest way to get better at making games is just to make bad ones, and that's how it is. I can't tell you how many bad board game prototypes I've made that have bombed. And I don't know. I've shown a couple of them, but they are sitting on my shelf right now. I'm probably not going to go back to them until I'm ready. But those games are not playable. They are not, currently not fun. But I've taken the things that I've learned from those bad games, and I've been able to implement them into new designs, other people's designs, and they've all become better games because of it. I apologize. I'm reading chat still, and I'm appreciating the conversation that's going on in there. But let's get to the next slide, because I have a challenge for everyone. I have a kind of a little puzzle. This is a board game representation of a very popular indie title back in 2013. And if you can guess what this game is, I will be very impressed. But this is a story-based visual novel. Not a visual novel, yeah. It was kind of dubbed a walking simulator. And I'm going to give you guys, again, a little bit more time in chat so you can let this mystery build up. But yeah, it was released in 2013. It was called a walking simulator with some spooky overtones. I think that's what I have for right now. I think the last hint, it started with a phone call and you having to drive home to investigate a mystery. No, Undertale is incorrect, but that is okay. Oh, Gone Home! Oh, someone like a CS Kid 13. You got it. That is correct. Gone Home is the right answer. Mechanics can be whatever you want them to be, and that is a beautiful thing in both the video game and board game world that I really wanted to exemplify. This example was not my own. It was taken from a GDC talk that I could not find, unfortunately. I remember watching it, but it was phenomenal about how they talked about mechanics are, again, what it says here is that they can be whatever you want them to be. Because Gone Home, functionally, is 52 pickup with a really good bard. The exact quote is that it was find the ace in a pile of cards, and Gone Home made finding that ace in that pile of cards very fun because of the world building, because of all the story and the ambiance it builds. Gone Home absolutely made a name for itself because of how it took something so simple as wandering, exploring, finding a room, and then finding your ace that you could go to the next pile of cards and find the ace in that pile of cards. And granted, when you found the 6 or the 9 or the 10 or the jack or the queen, like you would find these numbers and you'd maybe get a little bit of more story coming out of it, but you were still locked in until you found that ace on that pile of cards. So that's effectively 52 pickup, right? Like you can't leave that until you found the ace, and you can't leave until you found maybe all the cards and go to the next pile of cards. And like that doesn't sound like a fun board game, right? But if I told you to pick up 52 cards in multiple pile of cards, but that I would sit next to you with a guitar and I would play some music and then tell you a funny story while you're picking up those cards. All of a sudden that maybe sounds better or worse, depending on if you know me as a person. But yeah, that's a wonderful element of like how board games and video games can still exemplify each other mechanically. And I should probably stop switching between the two windows because I can see on the Twitch stream every time I flicker between the chat and the presentation. Or what I could do is let's go back. Let's go like this because I can actually put them side to side. What did I think about this ahead of time? Okay, we fixed it. We're good. No, it's not. Oh my gosh, is it gonna do the whole window? No, that's fine. It's fine. Go back to present. It's okay. Here's the next example. My favorite game, one of my favorite games back in, oh gosh, I forgot when Dark Souls was released. But when Dark Souls first came out, I dove so hard into that game. and I almost not necessarily broke a controller, but I got very frustrated, as is Dark Souls 1. But one of the beautiful things that I have found about Dark Souls is that even in its board game, they stay true to its mechanics. In the world of the first thing you see when you open the box is a thin paper sheet that says "You died," and that's just beautiful game design. But Dark Souls does a wonderful job about exemplifying its inspired mechanics from the video game into a board game world. And as I said before, there's a lot of common ground between those two. So what Dark Souls, the board game, does is that it makes the game is unruly hard. Like there's a lot of damage that is dealt to a player that's often not easily mitigated, but it is very fair in that the boss behavior deck is phenomenal. In that once you see a boss deck, or once you encounter a boss, the deck is created and it is not shuffled after that point. And what happens is that as you fight the boss, the cards will just flip over, revealing what its next attack, what its next turn does, and the players will have to react or plan ahead, or have their turn and move ahead of time before the boss gets a chance to flip the next card. And what's most important about this is that if the players die, that boss deck does not shuffle and does not change, meaning that the next fight that goes into this boss, that they can kind of know that what the next elements are coming up. So he's like, oh, okay, so this particular pattern, he's got sweeping strike, halberd thrust, and then he'll do tail whip, tail sweep. So from the first fight, you're saying, okay, I remember when he was doing this turnaround. So after his halberd thrust, he's gonna do an AoE tail whip behind him. So I should stand in front of him so I don't take the damage that he's going to do. Perfect. But that's a beautiful thing that they've taken the time and paid homage to the video game through the board game element. And I just gotta say, that is some phenomenal game design on both the board game and the video game world side of things. Which is an unfortunate test because I actually have a lot of problems with Diablo 3. I'm a huge Diablo fan, and one of the biggest things that really let me down, unfortunately, is that when Diablo 3 came out, it was a lot more limited in its decisions for how to create and let a player express themselves in builds. Granted, I'm not going to say it's bad, in that this is a build for what a necromancer looks like in Diablo 3. What happens is that when you level up, you unlock skills and you get to unlock more action bars or action bar slots with different abilities for each of them. And as you level up further, you unlock runes, and those runes modify that action. Again, each of those actions has about five. Yeah, each of them has 5 different runes that you can select and changes what the core ability does for that rune. And you also have a slew of passive skills that you gain through leveling up as well. And so through all these combinations, you can build a unique character that is your own. And in comparison, Diablo 2 has so much more, I would want to say, so much more customization, which is unfortunate because the Diablo 3 is supposed to be a sequel, which is meant to be improving on many things. And as you can see here on Diablo 2, you have multiple, like on the right side, you have different types of skills, and you have different types of passive magic abilities and crossbow, like bow and crossbow skills, which is what I would play. But the idea is that as you would level up, you'd gain points and spend them into the trees, and that will allow you to unlock more powerful abilities and also modify those abilities with the other higher tier passives. And the reason I bring up Diablo 2 is because Path of Exile has done it so much better in terms of a sequel. One of my favorite things with Path of Exile is that this is my Necromancer build, and this is way more complicated and way more what's the word I'm looking for? Just like there's a lot more analysis paralysis for this game. And if you can kind of guess what my build is based off this slide, I'd be impressed. But it's not very good. The point is that it was more of a fun build to make. But my one thing I want to point out is the difference between how one chooses multiple, like the game is presenting you with a limited amount of choice versus how this game gave you a lot expanded amount of choice. And Path of Exile has not improved, but has even further expanded on the amount of customizations that you as a player can create builds. With all that said, the reason I bring this up is that Sanctum is a board game that still encapsulates and has exemplified the the amount of complicated decisions a player has to make within a board game. And these common elements between the board game and video game world has opened my eyes to saying that, oh my gosh, the amount of development and thought process that has gone into Sanctum feels so fluid and so smooth that it must have been like somebody who loves video games and love these type of really high level like grindy gear type of games like action RPGs have really poured their efforts into this game because as I said before in the other two games and Path of Exile and Diablo, when you level up you gain skill points. Those skill points are spent on abilities, and those abilities change who you are as a character. In Sanctum, as you defeat enemies, what you'll do is that you end up getting experience points, which allows you to move up these gems on the right side here. And as you move up those gems, you will get to unlock those abilities. And here's the nice part: you can move these gems from anywhere on your board here. So if you move the gem off of Explosive Potion on the bottom right, it goes up to the top. And once it gets to the top row here, next to that little winged angel, or like this little white dot here, those gems now become spendable. If you remove all the gems of a card, you get to flip it to the side and equip it as a skill. So this turns leveling up experience-wise into both unlocking abilities and collecting these gems. So you unlock your abilities. What these gems do, they allow you to equip equipment. So the type of equipment you will have on your character is tied to what color of the gems are on your abilities. So if you wanted to equip this crazy two-handed sword or this crazy axe, it would require 2 red gems, which means you'd have to move up 2 red gems off of anywhere on your board to the top of this bar, and then that would allow you to equip it by putting it into your gear slot, like to your left hand or right hand. But you also have to put the appropriate gems to match it. And they even built in a little bit of character stats in that these red beads are your HP and the blue beads are your mana. Meaning that as you go into combat, you can spend a blue bead to change what your die roll result is, because combat is super simple. You roll a die, and if it matches what the enemy is, you destroy it. It counts as a hit. If you fail to kill it, you take a wound, and if your hearts go all the way down, you take you're dead. So, with all of that said, this game has a phenomenal combat system, which is very easy to perceive, but the amount of customization you have as a character and the amount of things that you can do, such as the Poison Blade, which allows you to turn your 1s into 6s and 6s into 1s, changes how you can build your character customization-wise in this board game inspired by action RPGs like Diablo. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe how smooth and how enjoyable Sanctum was. As a fan of Diablo and Path of Exile, I was like, this was clearly made by somebody who understands the genre and really, really cares about it. Even these little elements here, I like this element really quick. These two stats, or these two unlocks here, they actually only give you additional health or health and mana. And that's just like building up additional toughness for your character, which is fantastic. I really enjoyed how that worked out. And that even that you can also unlock additional stats for your character through these unlocks. You also, again, still get the gems, which allows you to get the different types of equipment. And again, just a fantastic example of how a board game and video game can still give the player the same experience. Just wonderful. With all those common things out of the way, we're going to jump into some rare elements, some stuff that I feel that we should really be talked about. Because there's a lot of things that I really enjoyed about finding how difficult it is to add and expand on mechanics on a game. Because on a recent game jam that I did with my friend Zach, who I saw briefly in chat, I don't know if they're sticking around, but Zach is so adamant during a game jam that when planning to make a game for a game jam, you only have 48 hours, that before any coding is done, the entire game layout is set from the get-go. And I found this so restrictive in my mind because I come from the world of board game development. And in board games, you don't have this kind of problem of like needing to figure out how much code to write, what the coding does, all those engineering things, because in the board game world, just like, oh, this just does this now. Or like, oh, we don't like this element, we can just cut it out and just take it out of the rulebook completely. And that is so immediate It is outrageous how fast a board game, whether at a prototype stage or even near like its midlife development, can still be changed just by a couple words and be like, okay, no, it just does this now. Okay, yeah, easy. Like melee games in a shooter, like that's pretty standard. But what if this shooter didn't have any melee? Okay, cool. Just take up the melee. It's all shooting now. Cool, easy. In a video game world, that would be a lot of code that you'd have to functionally take out and remove, and hope that it doesn't cause any bugs down the line. And that is something that I have learned to appreciate through many of the game jams that I had to work in both video game worlds. And it's something that I'm trying not to take for granted in the board game world either. So this is something I want, something that both developers and a board game and video game should learn from each other, and that board gamers should really be thinking how hard it is, or how much a mechanic is adding if they're putting something new in, or how much that mechanic really is contributing to the game, and if they took it out, does it change how much of the game core experience is changed because they removed it? And I'm just thinking that it's just a wonderful thing to be thinking of as you're constantly creating mechanics or creating depth or creating extended content for a board game, figuring out what is absolutely needed for your core experience. And video games could actually maybe try to do visualizations with more physical components, and maybe even use mood boards. I think that's something I really appreciated recently is a mood board, or being able to point to a previous video game or point to a different example and be like, okay, this is what I'm looking for, or like I'm looking for R-type, or not Gradius, I'm looking for R-type games. And having those point of references can help conceptualize a lot of games, or a lot of mechanics for what your game should be, or what it wants ahead of time, so that when the amount of planning is done, you can have a direction headed toward there. And I do want to say thank you to Zach, because that was such a big revelation to me. After that game jam, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm spoiled, because I do a lot more board game development than I do video game development. But with all this said, I actually have a little bit of a challenge for people, because this is just kind of a thought process. If somebody was going to approach you and say, hey, I would like to make let's theoretical story. Somebody walks up to you and they're willing to pay money, and they're willing to basically fund an idea for you, and they want to make a prototype of a choose your own adventure with these kind of requirements here, saying that they want a randomized event items and counter system. They want multiple endings, about 24. They want the game to offer deep replayability, and they want the player's feeling to be focused on exploration. And now I look at all of you and I say, would you make a board game or video game prototype of this? And that's the challenge. And I feel like a lot of you would say video games, because that's what a lot of you have experience with making. Me have experience making video games. But for me, I actually don't have kind of video game experience. But looking at both sides of this, there's actually pros and cons to how to make a prototype in this regards. Because in the board game world side of things, there's a lot of physical components you'd have to cut out. And there's that's the kind of a con, but the video game side of things, there's a lot of coding that they would have to do, despite having a lot of software templates, things that they could use to kind of jumpstart their process. But it could absolutely be done both sides. Even again, looking at the board game, honestly, there's so many fun ways to add mechanics for randomization, whether it's drafting, picking up, or even shuffling a deck of cards. There's a lot of ways you can go with randomization for a board game, and have it still feel experience, and still have the experience of it being generally created like you would in a video game. So even though a video game saying like open up a loot chest, get this item, that is the equivalent of in a board game, draw a card off the top of the deck. Both function very well, but there is a little bit more. There's a little bit of cons on the negative side, in that the board game is kind of hard to build ambience, in that you can't really have the music. You can't have like a voiceover unless you actually want to include like a digital app of some sort to make the player have that kind of experience that includes the type of like spooky ghost noises like you would in Gone Home. In the video game side of things, it's probably a lot more asset demanding in terms of art, in terms of 3D models, depending on if you're making a 2D or a 3D game. Animations, like there's a lot more on the video game side of things if you want to make this fully fledged into the game. And even just the ending sequence, in that the board game would probably just do a rule book with requires a checklist or saying that, oh, did you collect these items? Or in the style of one of the choose your own adventure games that do exist out there. Gosh, I don't remember the name of it, but it's basically a deck of cards. And as you stack up danger, if you take too much danger, you lose a life, and the game is over for you. And that's kind of an ending in that regards. But if you wanted a multiple choice kind of ending, I would envision a rulebook that would be saying, basically saying, what items did you pick up along your way? What events did you do? And it would basically be a checklist or a table that would tell you what page of a book to turn to, so that you can see what ending you got for your run. In a video game, ending is kind of just depending on where the player goes. You can basically put them in a rule set, and the game's rules will tell you, okay, you got this ending because you did this event and you had these items and you spared this person's life, and so this is the ending you get. The video game can all do that through coding. And a rulebook is actually much harder for a board game to do the same. The real answer here, though, is, of course, TLDR, do what's fastest for you. Now, onto mythical differences. This is just some weird final steps of things I want to talk about here on the end here. Just that there's a lot of weird bureaucracy, of course, when it comes to professionally making a game. And just to help people understand a little bit of differences, this is something that's come up a lot. Even with a recent talk I've had with Mark in the Nice Games Club. It was funny that we had the discussion ahead of time, because I was actually working on this slide before that talk came into existence. But yeah, there's just a lot of weird differences between legal stuff. Board game publishers, if you have a board game yourself and you want to sign up with a publisher, be prepared to sign ownership or ownership of that design or IP away, because it is very common to do that, because the developer or the publisher is going to want ownership of the product so that they can make any changes that they need to make it from just a game to a product that can sit on a shelf. And I think that's the biggest concern that most publishers have when signing a game design from a designer, that they want to maintain full control so they can have full final say on any type of thing that comes out. Granted, when it comes to contract, you absolutely have leeway to make negotiations, of course. Don't just say that. Don't just take this as like a general. Don't just take this as an absolute rule. It is not. But this is just kind of the general rules that I have heard through my exploration in the industry. But video game publishers also want the same, but it is absolutely not common for people to, or recommended for developers to ever sign your IP away. It is way more tight knit because, of course, your concept and your design for characters and art and mechanics and gameplay is yours. That's for you to keep. And I think I also agree to that. Do not sign that away unless you are absolutely sure that it's going to go to the right person and be in the right hands. In the world of payment, it's just weird. Again, having a discussion with an S Game Club. Board game contracts are completely generally royalty based in that you get a net share of profits because they are taking and handling almost everything else about that board game once you've signed that away. So again, just talking from experience, once you sign a game with a publisher, they basically are going to work on the art, handle every little bit of manufacturing logistics in terms of even reaching out to a manufacturer, getting to see if they can 3D print molds. Like if you have an insert for the box, just like injection molding insert for the box, they're going to design all of that. And figuring out the art on the cards, figuring out the size of the cards, what type of material, testing, those different elements, that's going to be on the side of the publisher as soon as it's signed over. And that is probably why you are not going to get a lot as much as terms of even like advancement, or again, that's probably why they also want the ownership of it, because ownership of the IP/design, because they're putting in thousands of dollars, hundreds, maybe $100,000, depending on how big of a game that they plan to make, or how much of that product they plan to order from overseas, from locally. It doesn't matter. That is a lot of funding that they're probably putting at risk in the hopes of making more money when it comes to the profits of it. Which, of course, having signed a contract, you will get a percentage royalty from. So that's how board game contracts work. But video game contracts, I've heard, are very different in that they get a much higher advancement because you, as a developer in the board game and the video game world, are finishing that game, and so it is much more important for you to kind of grasp how much time that you're going to be committing to this contract. Because what they will do is that they will, of course, recoup advancement through sales until we're paid. But after that point, you also get you also will be getting money after that point. So it is almost on the complete flip side. How it works almost in the opposite ways on how video games and board games work. But of course, both companies are responsible for handling like types of marketing and distribution, so they assist in those regards, and that's why you reach out to a publisher, because of course the third way to publish your game is crowdfunding on things like Kickstarter and things like that. But of course, at that point, you are handling all the work on yourself, and that is a completely different system in terms of wanting to get your game published, because you of course could go that route. And oh my gosh, I cannot imagine how much work that goes into a Kickstarter. So I don't do it myself. But moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about convention life and doing what QA means for both industries. And I found that there's a little bit differences. In the convention life, board games actually have a lot more about the pitch, and that's how you want to make those connections whenever you're trying to make the sale. And in terms of a board game, you want to do a lot more work ahead of time. Like you are setting up a presentation, you are selling yourself in terms of wanting to do like what's the word I'm looking for? Like an interview. It is an interview with the publisher, and that not only are you trying to make sure that they like your game, they also want to make sure that they like you. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to tell people when they were first publishing the game, which again comes again with that Nice Games Club podcast, is that you want to prepare yourself in terms of like having a good pitch, having a sales sheet, even picking out who you're pitching to is a very good type of thing, but also just being public with it. Like one of the biggest things that I get from a lot of first-time board game developers is that they're like, I don't want anyone to steal my idea. My game is so good. It's so unique. I don't want people to take it. I'm afraid of showing it. That's a realistic request internally, but I will tell you that is an unrealistic fear and expectation of the board game world, because you cannot like trademark the like a mechanic unless you're Magic the Gathering, where they have trademarked the actual TCG. I think what it is. No, I think they trademarked TCG, or it could be that they trademarked CCG. But in any case, whatever they trademark, the entire industry moved forward and used the other one. Because that's how it works. Because you can't really like say that, oh, I've trademarked a roguelike, in that whenever you die, you can level up and you can proceed. You can attempt the game again with a higher level and more skills, more weapons. That's my mechanic. No, that's not how that works. You can't. That's not how you do that in the video game world. You also can't do that in the board game world. So to say that you have a really good idea, what's more important is to make sure that you are developing it first. Because if someone else makes the game and they publish it, that is now their idea, because they've gotten into they've created a physical product that now exists in reality. And if you do not do that first, then you are the one infringing on their work. So that's what I got to say about that. So if you have a game and you have a fear of somebody taking it from you, you better make sure that that is a really good game that you showcase first and you bring it up to people, versus wanting to keep it hidden. Because if you keep it hidden, no one will ever see it, which basically means it doesn't exist, right? Is that how Schrodinger's cat works, right? And that if you don't see what's in the box, it may or may not be real. It may not be alive, may not be dead, it just may not exist. So I want to say, if you have a really cool game and you have those fears about somebody taking your idea and running with it, I will tell you right now, that is unfortunate that you feel that way, because I would like to see your game and I want the world to see your game. So if you want to, come reach out, come talk to me. How video games work out. Granted, the pitching and the convention life is, again, a little bit different in that you also want to have a presentation, and you also want to be working on your team story, because of course what they're going to be doing is pay a higher advancement and just make sure that the game is made, that they're taking a risk on you and your team. So it's going to be a little bit different in terms of the pitch, but you are still performing what is effectively an interview with with that publisher. So it's still very good to make sure that you take the time to call ahead. And cold calls are unfortunately kind of the way to go about things, but there is a lot of ways that you can still reach out to people. Like even the Nintendo, even reaching out to Nintendo for a development kit was surprisingly easy to like reach out to, in terms of like you send a couple of emails, wait for a reply, you fill in the right information in terms of what they're requesting, with like who is your team, what's their name, their title, what's your dev team size, all those other things like that. You fill those information out, they will eventually get back to you and then send you a dev kit, which is very, very cool to say that it is something you just do online and it just happens. Given time, of course. But then, of course, you also have to embrace all these online elements too. So doing things like when I went to GDC a few years ago, I had a much harder time setting up meetings than I thought I would, because in the board game world, it was very easy for me to set up meetings just because I just had to make a connection ahead of time and then reach out to people and then go. But for me in the video games world, I didn't realize that I needed a presentation. I was very much set on like making an Excel sheet and pitching it like that. But no, it was not exact. It was not at all what people were looking for. And so, just respecting the differences and whatever you're working into, just kind of go in with that mindset, being like you have to match what the industry is looking for, and yeah, you can't always fight the way it's going with. Really quick, a little bit about the quality assurance. Quality assurance, there's going to be a lot more in regards of just saying that the board game side of things, there's a lot more physical components, and it's all about length of play, fun and feel. That's my hand. And that's kind of just some quick words. It's gonna be some quick jargon to say that the board games are gonna be a little bit harder to balance with the need of. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the looking at the Twitch chat. Sorry. Shout outs to gosh, I don't want to give a shout out to McDonald's. I don't. I was like, oh, I'm not necessarily hungry. I did have dinner before, but I saw that. I was like, that does sound good right now. But yes, sorry, back board game metrics. So doing a lot of the QA side of things, you are not really looking for bugs, glitches, or any type of those issues. What you're looking for is the game gonna fit what you want it to be in terms of gameplay, in terms of length, in terms of difficulty, complexity, all these different types of elements. So like if you're making a really entry level game that it plays in under 45 minutes, you want to make sure that when a player is making decisions on their turn, it's very quick and snappy. And if you want a player to make if you're making a game like Twilight Imperium, which is a 10-hour board game, if you haven't heard of that one before, if you want to have a player make very, very heavy overarching decisions on their turn, then you want to make sure that the player is presented with enough information so that they can make informed decisions. So you have to front load a lot more information for that player because they're committing a lot more time for a different heavyweight game. So in terms of even just saying that, oh, okay, if you want to make very easy decisions for 10 hours, that's a completely different game experience. And I don't think anyone would want to play that as a board game. But as a video game, you can make a lot of decisions very easily and then play that for 10 hours like Dead Cells. It's a very it's a very easy game to play that you just pick up, make a lot of quick decisions, die, okay. Pick up again, make a lot of decisions, die, great. But in the board game world of things, that would be a terrible, terrible board game. And that's what the intended experience that you're trying to give to a player. That's going to be why board games and video games do have a lot of those differences, because even in the video game side of QA, they have a lot more type of digital aspects, which include things like code. When you have to do quality assurance for a video game, you are looking for issues with the code. And that's where like everything really like stems from. Like everything really stems from the code. Like if there's a bug that breaks the game, or if there's like a visual glitch or things like that, that's all within the code, and that just has to get reported, caught early before it's sent out to the world. And those are completely different from a board game, because a board game's visuals are all set and done in terms of art. And on the art side of things, it's very easy to be either like, okay, this is an easy fix, like if it's off centimeter in terms of like we sent the PDF, like it's printed on the the cutout, and when they printed it, it got sent off by like 1 centimeter. So when you punch it out of the cutout and you see a little white edge on the side of like what's normally supposed to be a really colorful article, like a really colorful character model on like a piece of cardboard, and that little white stitch is there, that's going to be like, okay, well, this prototype didn't come out right, we have to adjust it, we have to adjust the cut sheet by a few millimeters to the left, and that's going to be how you do kind of QA for a board game. But in a video game, if that's going to be an issue, like, oh, the character's reload animation doesn't look right. They're not even like they're touching the right parts of the gun, but in terms of how it feels, like it's taking a long time, or is their hand clipping into the gun? Then that's going to be something you can just report, and then you can send it to the developers who can change the code, change the animations, and that's going to be how QA works for the video game side of things. And that's going to be something that I've really found that is just not infuriating, but just it's something that I think both sides of the world should know, because when you're overhearing a discussion that I've seen Mark and Steven do for their game that's going to be hopefully be coming out, is that they were talking about game design or balancing balancing a solo play game in terms of a video game view, and but stepping away as a person who does board games. I was like, wow, they have a completely different thought process about this, and I think that's something that both worlds should take a peek at, because in the video game world of things, you're always looking at the physicality, like the end result of something, and in the board game world, you're always looking at what does it feel, what does it play like, and there's just elements on both sides of QA that should be appreciated, or at least reaching out to each other and trying a little bit of development on both sides. So, yeah, that's going to be what I have for quality assurance. So we have the final bridge of my end notes here, and here we go with some things I've been doing on purpose. So for those of you who have seen my other presentation, I generally do a lot of work into it and to make it look a very, very good style. And what's been really hard for me is to purposefully make it look wrong. Like, I'd love to take a look at what people's I'd love to see what people's thoughts are on this presentation, and how infuriating it has been for people to see how I have my titles on the bottom. I have text misaligned, and I've been doing weird screen transitions, looking back and forth between the Twitch chat and not doing the full presentation. Like, a lot of this has been done with intention, because being wrong with a purpose is better than just wrong. Because this is what I wanted to like kind of end the presentation with. This final twist, saying that what is wrong versus what is good. Because what is wrong for one game doesn't make it automatically wrong for another game of the same genre. This is a big debate that I had while working at Floodgate Games for a year. Is that I always got the whole debate of Sagrada versus Azul. And this is kind of like an age-old debate with the board game world, saying that they're both drafting games. They're effectively the same thing, right? Which one's better? And I'm like, no. They're completely different games. Like, Sagrada is a Sudoku. Azul is a set collector. The core mechanic of drafting from a pool that's publicly shared between all players is the link. But how they play are completely different games. Because what is right? Like, what is the right way to do a thing? Do text boxes fit there? Is this a fair comparison? Is Dota 2 a fair comparison to League of Legends? No. What is right for one game does not automatically make it right for another genre. And the way I've been doing this presentation the entire time, I've been purposefully like trying to stutter, purposefully slowing down, like maybe talking a little bit faster than I should. I have a lot of notes that I've written up, and I was like, okay, I will read only 2 of these 3 note lines, so I could basically use some lack of information. But I have it all typed out here that I could be following. But I was just like, no, let's just skip that line and go to the next one and see how it feels. And oh my god, it's not necessarily saying that this is my worst presentation, but it's been a presentation that I've been doing wrong with purpose. But it's been really fun, because I don't think I've ever done this type of presentation where I've purposely chosen to skip an element, in that it's worth saying that doing something wrong, when you know all the wrong ways to do something, it becomes so much clearer what is right. Yeah, there's just so much fun to say that. I rarely break the rules when doing a presentation. I really try to do things in the right order, and follow what is told, follow what is asked of me to do all the time. And that's going to be something that is very, very helpful to get you in the right place and go in the right direction. But I've been kind of like, not necessarily landlocked, but kind of stuck in my current world of making games, and I was like, I'm gonna break the rules. I'm gonna just do whatever I want. I'm gonna just flip everything on its head and just change it and see how it feels. And I'll tell you right now, it doesn't feel great. But I am happy I did it because it gave me this scope, this experience to say that, it is exactly what you need to do. And I want to leave this last bit of inspiration to everyone. And that's how I like to do my presentations. I do dental facts and I do inspiration at the end. Because what it is worth doing the wrong thing if you are going to learn from it. And I'd rather you don't be afraid to push yourself out there and make mistakes. Because, as according to this quote that I've been working on for quite some time now, to put into an eventual novel one day, it doesn't matter who you were in the past or who you will be in the future. What matters is who you are, right here, right now. And that is my inspirational quote for you guys, because again, I've made a lot of mistakes in my past, and I was like, I went to my Facebook and I pulled out this picture of myself. That's 2007 Peter Yang, and the one on the right is like a 2013 Peter Yang, and then here I am standing by a waterfall on a rainy day, and that was like 2 years ago, 2019, something like that. Yeah, that's a lot of time between those things, and I have made so many mistakes on accident. So many accidental mistakes, but today I made a lot of mistakes on purpose, and that is actually going to be where I leave it off. Because that is the best thing I can say to you guys, is that don't be afraid to make your mistakes on purpose or an accident, but if you do make them on purpose, make sure you are willing to learn from them. Okay, yeah, that's my talk. Now we move to the questions phase, and now we can catch up to the other chat and be like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness. Oh, Mark, yes, you can absolutely jump back in here. Can we call me Cowpoke? Only when I have the hat on, please.
Well done, Peter. I liked the big twist at the end.
Yes.
Very sneaky. I loved it. So basically, all those dental facts, just ignore them all. Do the opposite of
that. Those were real dental facts. No.
The subterfuge began after the dental facts.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, good. That's important for people to know for the next time you pull the wool over all of our eyes.
No. This was definitely more of a personal test that I wanted to see how people would react and how people feel about the weird presentation, because you saw a lot of things being like, I honestly like to see. I like to hear people's thoughts on the titles being on the bottom. Was that annoying, or was it something that you just kind of embraced because I was just a presenter? Clearly, I know.
Well, there was someone in chat who just like went off on it.
Really?
But I was like, no, that's all right. I see that's good. But then you started switching things up, and okay.
Yeah, where is this? Oh my gosh. I kind of want to read this. How did people feel about my PoE rap?
Yeah, very lively chat all the way through. I think one of the things that I think your presentation did a really good job of is just like bringing up a lot of stuff. Like, not just saying there's a lot of stuff, but like actually putting it all out there for people to spur discussion. I think that's a really great way to format your talk, is just to have a sneaky structure, because some real pearls of wisdom, but also just lots of stuff. It was great. And I want to say, you're hyping up the episode of Nice Games Club that you appeared on, but that ain't coming out yet. That's coming out. I had to check our publishing schedule. That's going to be episode 231, which will be out.
Okay.
Which it'll be out August 26th.
Okay.
That'll be right before 2DCon. Will be that episode. And folks, I was there, and I'd say Peter provided a lot of real amazing wisdom about pitching board games to a captive audience. Those of us in Nice Games Club are working on a board game that Peter is helping us with, and we learned a lot, and it's really well done. And it's basically like more of what he was talking about tonight in a slightly different format. So tune into that. That'll be at nicegames.club, August 26th. All right, Peter. You think it's time to wrap up the night?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Right.
If you have any questions, I will be. I think we'll stay on jumping into the Discord for general chat or
Yes,
Minneapolis room.
It looks like the Minneapolis room has a pair of early attendees ready to get the conversation started. So, folks, if you want to join us in the Discord, please do. Otherwise, I guess we will see you next month. Tune in to here at Twitch a week from now for Twin Cities Playtest. A week after that for VR and HCI, and next month for the next game dev meeting.
Wait. I will answer Lane's question really quick.
Okay, please do.
Is there a benefit to cross training? The question is there a benefit to cross training? Do you find people who do both are particularly good at anything? Totally not a self-serving question, I swear. And I would say, yeah, there is absolutely benefits to cross training. There are problems I've been able to solve in board games using video game logic and vice versa, and that's been such a fun trick to pull from because to add a little bit of a sneak. I'm working on a game with Box on the next title, and we are pulling many elements from video games into a board game space. And so having literally the training of video game QA into this area, I could not have made this game without that ability. So yeah, so there's absolutely worthwhile to do cross training in both.
Yeah,
But
even if you're not like intending to dual track, like knowing something about that side can help you with the track you're more focused on, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Also, let's give a round of applause for Mark, our host for the night.
No, Beth will be back next month, and you'll all be happier then, I promise. All right, well, we'll see you in the Discord, folks. Good night.